A major breakthrough at the front, the Ukrainian armed forces have launched a counterattack in two directions at once. A sensation in NATO. A decision has been made to shoot down Russian drones and missiles over Ukraine. A real uprising in occupied Donbas. Local residents are demanding water and criticizing the authorities. A fuel crisis in Russia. Gasoline is not being sold in several regions. China enters the war. The Ukrainian armed forces have captured Chinese soldiers, and their confessions were shocking. Putin's army is practicing strikes in the Barents Sea, while it seems Trump has run out of patience. Hello, my name is Yulia Kokan, and right now, here are the main stories. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose touch with you on YouTube. Europe is considering the Sky Shield initiative to shoot down Russian targets over Ukraine, according to Lyman. The publication notes that after the incident with Russian drones in Poland, European countries are increasingly realizing the need to change their defense strategy. This means abandoning the strategy of shooting down drones only over one's own territory and moving toward actively intercepting targets while they are still over Ukraine. This approach aligns with the Sky Shield initiative. It involves shooting down Russian missiles and drones over Ukrainian airspace, which would simultaneously protect both the population of Ukraine and Europe's critical infrastructure, including nuclear power plants. According to estimates, implementing the plan would require just 120 Allied aircraft. And in addition to all this, there was a high-profile statement from the head of the Polish Foreign Ministry. Radosław Sikorski stated that the Allies should consider establishing a no-fly zone over Ukraine to protect Europe from Russian drone attacks. In addition, he suggested that the West intercept Russian drones and missiles in Ukrainian airspace. According to him, Poland could shoot down drones over Ukraine, but such a decision would be made together with its allies.
If Ukraine asks us to shoot them down over its territory, it would be beneficial for us as well. If you ask me personally, we should consider it. Technically, we, Nato and the EU, could do this, but Poland cannot make this decision alone, only together with its allies.
But it seems that Russia really doesn't like such statements. Former President Dmitry Medvedev, who is also the head of the country's Security Council, wrote another piece of nonsense on his Telegram and threatened NATO countries with war. Listen for yourself.
The entire Minister of Defense of Estonia came to Kiev making threats. Well, now you're in for it. The smaller the country, the more aggressive and foolish its leaders are. I was also amused by the powerful European initiative Eastern Guard. It seems that's all that's left of the coalition of the willing. But seriously, the implementation of the provocative idea by the Kiev authorities and other idiots to create a no-fly zone over Ukraine and the possibility for NATO countries to shoot down our UAVs means only one thing: a war between NATO and Russia. Things need to be called by their proper names.
What do you think? Will the Europeans move from words and promises to action? Will they shoot down Russian drones over Ukrainian territory? Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely read them. Ukraine's defense forces continue to push the enemy out of the Sumy region. Analyst Ed Epstein reports that fighters from the 225th USHP managed to drive the Russians out of fortified positions near Novokonstantinovka and Konstantinovka. Meanwhile, the enemy has advanced near Novoyevanovka, Ivanovka, and in Zivayrovoe. At the same time, in the Kupiansk direction, Ukrainian defenders continue to repel Russian attempts to advance along the pipeline. The Ukrainian soldiers have now placed a significant amount of barbed wire inside the pipeline in order to prevent Russian troops from using it.
Regarding Kupiansk, the fighters have long been aware of those advancing on the northern outskirts and those crawling along the pipeline, and have been resisting them for a while now. This information was not disseminated, including through the guys at Deep State, I suspect, for the sake of the security of certain of our previous actions.
Soldiers with the call sign Officer report a relatively stable situation in the Volchansk direction. The enemy, says the soldier, is actively using drones here.
This direction is quite specific because it was here about a year ago that the first signs of what is now a popular phenomenon, the kill zone, began to appear. Karamotos are only now starting to suffer from enemy FPV drones, even though they are 20 kilometers from the line of contact. But in the Volchansk direction, this situation has been going on for a long time already. The enemy has been causing logistics problems here for several months now.
Russian assaults are also continuing in the Dnipropetrovsk region.
In the Dnipropetrovsk region, the enemy carries out assault operations daily, mainly focusing on centralized paved roads and moving along them towards settlements in the direction of Pokrovska.
Meanwhile, in the Dobropilya direction, a unit of the Ukrainian Armed Forces and National Guard cleared the settlement of Pankivka and the surrounding areas of Russian occupiers. However, the Russians are advancing, and it is worth noting the price at which this advance is happening. Ukrainian intelligence intercepted a conversation in which a Russian woman describes the situation of her relative, an occupier, in the war against Ukraine.
Dimka is in the hospital. We managed to get in touch with him yesterday. His leg, there are 3 holes in it and a fragment in his neck, but they didn't remove it. They didn't even try to take it out. He told me that if they take it out, it means I'll have to recover for a long time. And if I'm out for a long time, they don't want that. They want it to heal quickly so they can send me back. Out of 25 of them, only 2 are still alive. Apparently, yes, he realized even back then when he ended up there after just 5 days of training.
For a more detailed look at the situation on the front lines, watch the report from our journalists.
The occupiers are trying to break through the Ukrainian defenses. The Russians are advancing simultaneously on 5 sections of the front. In the Velika Mikhailivka direction in the Zaporizhzhia region, the enemy is actively preparing for the offensive phase. The main goal of the occupiers is to reach the village of Verbova.
We, of course, knew that
there would be assault operations, but we did not expect the enemy to advance on such a broad front.
The situation is somewhat better in the Novopavlivka direction, where our defenders managed to take control of the settlement of Filial. Previously, it was repeatedly attacked by the enemy, who tried to seize it, but now the positions are held by the Ukrainian armed forces. The military explains that this tactical node is extremely important for the armed forces of Ukraine, as it allows them to monitor the movement of the occupiers' infantry and equipment. The situation in the Pokrovsk direction is difficult but stable. The main fighting there is concentrated around Vladimirovka. The Ukrainian armed forces control most of the settlement, but the enemy does not relent, striking with guided bombs, trying to change the tactical situation, and may attempt to break through our lines. At the same time, Ukrainian units are conducting counterattacks southeast of Sofiivka in an attempt to regain control over the local groves.
The enemy
is not stupid at all, quite the contrary. After every single assault, they analyze precisely what happened. They take the strategies that work and use them again next time, and for what doesn't work, they simply stop using it. That's why in this case there was indeed very active coordination with FP Vishnikov, active cooperation with reconnaissance UAVs like Zala, and then the Lancets were launched. The enemy is responding very actively.
On the Konstantinovka front, the Russian army is trying to gain a foothold in the dacha settlements in front of the city, building up forces and equipment for a breakthrough. Nevertheless, our fighters are systematically targeting the occupiers, so for now the location remains a conditional gray zone. The key direction for the Russians right now is the southeastern flank. It is from there that the main assault on the city may begin, and the further course of the fighting depends on our ability to timely detect and eliminate concentrations of enemy forces.
The artillery worked very well. A lot of their light vehicles and cars were blown up by mines because as a normal, regular brigade, we are very good at fortifying the front line from an engineering standpoint.
The fighting does not subside in the Siversk-Lyman direction. Dronivka, Siversk itself, and nearby villages on the approaches to the city have come under attack. Active combat operations also continue in Zarekny. Neither we nor the enemy have stable control over the territory there. At the same time, special forces from the main intelligence directorate struck an enemy anti-aircraft missile system. Guar fighters detected and successfully hit a Buk M3 system belonging to the Russian invaders. The cost of this air defense system ranges from $40 to $50 million. Today, the Kremlin also lost another expensive Putin military toy, an Aryan strike reconnaissance UAV. Its operational range is about 300 kilometers, and the approximate cost of the downed metal bird is over $5 million. Ukrainian drones recently flew into yet another Russian oil refinery. UAVs attacked a whole range of Russia's oil refining facilities and enemy military-industrial complex sites. A major methanol production plant in the Russian city of Gubaka, Permkrai, was hit. The strike on the occupiers' key chemical infrastructure, located more than 1,600 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, came as a real shock to the Kremlin. The Kirishi oil refinery in Leningrad Oblast was also hit. According to Russian reports, 3 drones were shot down in the area of the city of Kirishi, but their debris caused a fire on the premises of the facility. However, eyewitness videos suggest otherwise. The footage from the refinery looks more like a direct drone strike than shrapnel damage to the oil processing plant. By the way, the Kirishi oil refinery is considered one of the largest in Russia, and before the arrival of Ukrainian drones, was capable of processing about 20 million tons of oil per year. Unfortunately, there was also a loud incident the night before in the Kyiv region, where explosions were heard on the railway in the middle of the night. Powerful flashes and repeated sounds of explosions thundered in the area of the village of Kalinivka. As it turned out, shells detonated there while being transported by rail. A series of explosions damaged the overhead lines, resulting in dozens of shipments being delayed, and now trains are rerouted around the damaged section. By a random coincidence, the Kharkiv-Przemysl passenger train was at the epicenter of the explosions. The train made an emergency stop and hundreds of passengers were urgently evacuated from the scene to the nearest forest belt. Fortunately, no one was seriously injured, and after a few hours, the train continued on its route.
I never cease to admire the courage and heroism of Ukrainian soldiers. They hold the front and stand against a huge horde that vastly outnumbers them. That's why I urge you to support the armed forces of Ukraine, and if that's not possible, write them words of encouragement in the comments. I know they're watching us. Meanwhile, on the occupied territories, the battle for the factory continues. For example, Donetsk region, just another day under occupation. Right now, battles for the factory are literally happening in every house there. Videos circulating online confirm all of this.
The chart. Let's take a look. Let's take a look. Guys, look, the main pipe comes out to the entrance. They set it up for themselves on the 5th floor, pumping water.
They set it up for themselves. And
who did you set it up for? For the neighbors? Here, take a look. And here they are pumping. Come on, guys.
The caption under the video speaks for itself. Donbas 2014, Russia is salvation, and Donbas 2025, how do we flush the toilet? Savind.
Russia is our only salvation. If President Putin doesn't intervene, if Russia doesn't help us, then we will all surely die here.
We will all inevitably die.
People here are already at the point of extinction. Everyone just wants to leave because life here is simply unbearable. Please help us survive.
What are we supposed to do without water? What about our toilet?
The water utility said that you should...
And then, what happened next?
Everything will be fine because there's no water, so don't use the toilet.
The water utility is completely screwed.
Well, what else is there to add? That's the reality of life since Russia came. And how loudly they shouted, how loudly they called, well, here you go, you got what you asked for. Russia has sharply increased drone production to overload Ukraine's air defense. This was reported by the New York Times.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
The publication writes that every month the occupiers launch hundreds of drones trying to overwhelm Ukraine's air defense system. At the same time, the Ukrainian armed forces are successfully striking targets deep inside Russia with drones, but the scale of enemy attacks remains significantly greater. The increase in enemy attacks became possible thanks to the mass production of drones at 2 main factories within Russia itself, as well as the involvement of regional authorities, enterprises, and even school children in the creation of tactical drones. Combined with new technologies and tactics, this has become a serious challenge for Ukraine.
The increase in supplies from Russia, together with new technologies and tactics, has created an enormous challenge for Ukraine, which at the beginning of the war had an advantage in the use of drones, an advantage that Moscow has undermined. Russia uses strike drones together with missiles and decoys to saturate air defenses and carry out massive attacks on Ukrainian weapons production facilities, energy infrastructure, and cities. Kyiv has achieved significant successes. It has carried out drone strikes deep inside Russia and on Sunday struck a large oil refinery near St. Petersburg. But Russian barrages are larger and more complex, and Ukrainian forces are working to adapt their tactics to defend against them.
In light of such news, I want to once again urge our allies and partners not to forget about Ukraine and to help strengthen our air defense. Reading the comments under previous episodes, I see that many of our viewers are from Kazakhstan, Moldova, Europe, and even the USA. We Ukrainians are very grateful for your support and proud to have such sensible viewers. Let us know in the comments under this episode as well where you're watching from and whether you support our fight against the empire of evil. I always enjoy reading your comments. And now let's move on to the most interesting part. We kept going and going, but what was waiting on the shore? Well, you get the idea. Russia is experiencing a severe fuel crisis. Local media are already openly screaming about it and advising Russians to prepare for a prolonged gasoline shortage. It could last from several months up to half a year in the worst-case scenario. It is claimed that the fuel problems have affected not only Crimea and the occupied Donbas, but the entire border region of Russia. If previously the shortage was observed in the Far East and in Crimea, then in September it spread to other regions as well. Ryazan, Nizhny Novgorod, Saratov, Samara, Ulyanovsk, Penza, Rostov and Astrakhan regions, as well as Kalmykia and Tatarstan. In an unfavorable scenario, the shortage could spread deeper into the country. Some refineries have not been supplying 92 and 95 grade gasoline for several weeks, and some plants are completely shut down or operating inconsistently. The reasons are regular drone strikes on the refineries. The Russian Ministry of Energy is trying to stabilize the situation by introducing a temporary export restriction, but this is not helping. For example, the Center for National Resistance reports on the situation in the temporarily occupied territories.
The occupiers are unable to overcome the fuel crisis in the temporarily occupied territories. In the temporarily occupied territories, there is either no gasoline at all or it is distributed with strict limits. In the temporarily occupied areas of Luhansk, there has been no fuel for several weeks now. But instead of solving the problem, the occupation administration feeds people propaganda and holidays. This is the so-called Russian world, shortages and lies.
Or for example, these kinds of videos from the Belgorod region are going viral online. There's no gasoline there either. See for yourself.
Regarding the ongoing situation with gasoline here in Belgorod, unfortunately, it hasn't changed for the better at all. It seems that there's only diesel fuel left at the stations. As for my own vehicle, I only have about 40 kilometers of range left in the tank, and that is essentially it. So, to be perfectly clear, there is currently no gasoline available in Belgorod. Well,
what can I say? I definitely like this kind of news. Support these kinds of sanctions from Ukraine. Give this video a like. US President Donald Trump has, for the first time, called Russia the aggressor in the war against Ukraine, demonstrating the firmness of his stance toward Moscow. This was reported by Politico.
This week, 8,000 soldiers have died, from both countries. A bit more from Russia, but when you're the aggressor, you bear the pain.
Previously, Trump had refused to condemn Moscow for the invasion, and in February, his administration, together with Russia and North Korea, rejected a resolution that supported Ukraine's territorial integrity and condemned Russia. The US also opposed a G7 statement in which Russia was called the aggressor. At the same time, Trump added that he thought he would be able to stop the war between Russia and Ukraine more quickly, but unfortunately, he couldn't.
There is an immense hatred between Zelensky and Putin. They hate each other so much that they can't even talk. I think I'll have to conduct the entire conversation myself.
And that's not all. Donald Trump stated that he would introduce new sanctions against Putin, but only after Europe increases its pressure on Moscow. He believes that the sanctions imposed by EU countries against Russia are not tough enough. And the US president is especially dissatisfied with the fact that Europe is buying Russian oil.
We might be the only ones from whom they're expecting full commitment, at full capacity, but Europe is buying oil from Russia. I don't want them to buy it, and the sanctions they're imposing aren't tough enough. I'm ready to impose sanctions, but they'll have to strengthen their own sanctions in line with what I'm doing.
Meanwhile, Trump's special representative Packett Kellogg stated that Russian troops are not as strong as the Russian dictator Putin claims. According to him, Russia is actually losing the war in Ukraine. If Putin were winning, he would be in Kyiv?
Is Russia winning? That's a great question because President Trump asked me the same thing in the Oval Office about 6 weeks ago. The very same question, and I answered firmly. Mr. President, don't just listen to me. Your chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane, is waiting outside. He's standing by the car. Invite him in. Ask him. He's your top military advisor. Dan said the same thing. Are the Russians winning? No, they are not winning. And Putin can say they're winning as much as he wants. If Putin were winning, he'd be in Kyiv, west of the Dnipro, in Odessa, and would have changed the government. In reality, Russia is losing this war.
And in addition, Donald Trump announced a conversation with Chinese leader Xi Jinping already this Friday. Additionally, the American president reported that the trade meeting with China in Europe was successful and an agreement on a certain campaign important for American youth is almost finalized. NATO's response: the alliance is preparing to retaliate for the drones over Poland. Meanwhile, Putin's army is practicing a Panata strike in the Barents Sea. Details in the report.
The attack of Russian drones on Poland and the Zapad 2025 military exercises in Belarus are a rehearsal for an assault on NATO's eastern flank.
During the exercises in Belarus, the Russian Federation is practicing the capture of the Suwalki corridor. Build.
Russia doesn't even try to hide its goals and objectives. In Kaliningrad, Russia demonstratively deploys an Iskander missile system in broad daylight and on a busy road. The defense ministries of both the country and the aggressor report daily on successful training combat, missile and bomb strikes using aviation and the Navy against the territory of the North Atlantic Alliance.
MiG-31 aircraft crews equipped with the Kinjal aviation complex conducted a flight over the neutral waters of the Barents Sea as part of the Joint Strategic Exercise West 2025. During the training combat mission, the crews practiced delivering a simulated airstrike on critically important enemy targets.
In response, NATO is strengthening its military capabilities in countries neighboring Russia. According to Polish media, the previously announced Eastern Shield mission by Marek Mruta has already begun.
The Polish General Staff has published footage of a French A-400 transport aircraft landing in Minsk Mazowiecki. It delivered weaponry for Rafale fighter jets, which, as it turns out, are already in Poland.
As part of the mission, countries from Western and Northern Europe are strengthening the military technical capabilities of those nations most vulnerable to the Russian threat. In
these activities, Denmark, France, Britain and Germany will be involved in particular. This is telling, that is, we are talking about the practical application of Article 5 of the NATO Charter, namely collective security on the territory of both Poland and the Baltic states. There is a redeployment involving both the armed forces of these countries and accordingly the NATO member states. First and foremost, this is about strengthening land borders to prevent possible provocations.
It is also being reinforced because of the Eastern Sky Shield. France, Britain and Germany are deploying Rafale and Eurofighter jets, as well as additional air defense systems, to the territories of countries bordering the Russian Federation.
Any form of inaction, it goes without saying, is perceived as a clear sign of weakness. This perception, in turn, encourages not only the Russian Federation, but also other nations to potentially violate, in the future, the established international borders and the entire geopolitical architecture. This is the very architecture that was painstakingly established in the aftermath of World War II through the Yalta and Potsdam agreements, a framework which the United States is now making a concerted effort to uphold.
Now the question is whether the US will support Europe. After Donald Trump's vague response, European politicians began to doubt Washington's willingness to actually defend NATO's borders.
What is your reaction to the drone incursion into Poland? It could have been a mistake. It might have been a mistake. But regardless of that, I'm not happy about anything related to this situation. But I hope it will end.
The Kremlin is watching the response from Europe and the US. Weakness and ignoring the problem will serve as an invitation for Putin to move from rehearsals to a real attack.
Meet Sili Ben and Xiaoxin Xin. One of them is a drone operator, the other is a support engineer. One of the Russian soldiers filmed these shots and talked about how Putin's army is being reinforced with these kinds of mercenaries from China who have come to fight against some nationalists. Listen to what they have to say.
We have special guests from China at our training center, but they're not just guests. They are participants in the special military operation. One of them is an operator, the other is a support engineer. They are preparing as a combat unit to deliver fire strikes against nationalist forces. And today, we'll get to know them. What's your name?
I'm from China. I'm Xiaoxin Xin.
How do you feel about the special military operation? How do you like it here in our drone forces?
Don't tune in, we're on the previous line. Well, how?
How do you think the special military operation will end?
We in Burundi Bottle will do very well. And
How do you like it in the Russian army overall? Is it good, bad? Do you like it?
We think that on this line, it's foreignness. It's foreignness, 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 foreignness. Foreignness. We are foreigners in Burundi bottle. We come out from sacrificed in Burundi bottle, well, and not your real Viso.
Well, to be perfectly and completely honest with you,
Buddha, it's just that on Valor shooting, we catch it officially from Go Selected on the Beat Eraser. Well, about infections, I liquidity svela. We had MNS supply. And votives, svli, what smer avge cabinet some kind of fotbins. That is the real SWIFT in Russian. Wheat is becoming one of Russia's currencies for foreign trade, and Reuters reports on this. The publication writes that barter is noticeably increasing in Russia. For example, wheat is being exchanged for Chinese cars, or seeds are being traded for construction materials. According to journalists, the US, EU and their allies have imposed more than 25,000 sanctions over the 2022 war and the annexation of Crimea. Washington has also imposed tariffs on India for its oil trade with Russia. At the same time, Putin claims that Russia's economy has exceeded forecasts and over the past 2 years has grown faster than those of the G7 countries, despite predictions of a collapse. But according to the central bank, the economy is technically in recession and suffering from high inflation. The disconnection of Russian banks from the SWIFT system in 2022 has been particularly noticeable, and the warnings from the US to Chinese banks in 2024, as well as the risks of secondary sanctions. Because of the fear of falling under these sanctions, Chinese banks are avoiding transactions with Russia. It is precisely these concerns that are driving a return to barter, which is harder to track. Until now, commercial interest in barter has been weak. But according to Reuters, at least 8 such deals have already been recorded, ranging from the exchange of steel and aluminum alloys for ship engines to other types of raw materials. The Russian Customs Service confirmed the existence of barter with various countries, but said its volume is insignificant compared to overall trade. It will be interesting to see what will be exchanged next. Share your ideas in the comments. I'll definitely read them. How do you like our news? Let us know what we should change to get better. We'll definitely take it into account. In the meantime, give this video a like to support us. And be sure to subscribe to our channel, Ukraine Today, so you don't miss the next episodes. See you!